officially back now. Okay. We had to take two. Action. So we're back. It's been, I feel like every time we come back, it seems like the same. Has it been?
It hasn't, but it feels like it because I wasn't here the last time.
Oh, right. That was a different.
Right. And you calling in, and I was writing it.
Yes. I forgot. You know, last episode got real crazy in here. It just got out of hand. It just went. It didn't go left. It went where it should have went.
Yeah.
Because that's the conversation we needed to have. But it was just got real loud and real crazy in here.
And it continued.
And a fight almost broke out. But we had to stop it.
The caller had to bring it back.
The caller, like, okay, everybody, let's calm down.
I had people talking about that. Yes, they were like, "Who's the man voice in the background?"
No, they were definitely asking who they know who you are. They know you always in the background, but they were like, I have questions. Mm-hmm. Like people wanted a part 2, but we said no. We
might have to literally bring you on the show one day. Like, sit
you gotta come
sit over there.
Come on this side.
Have us.
Yeah, seriously, because people have questions.
Let me get another stool so I can sit my.
No, seriously.
Yeah.
Oh, you serious?
I'm so serious. People have questions.
We really had so
they
many
want to
people
know.
who wanted to know.
Everybody, if you go back on the feed, they were like, "What? I need to know. Where is he at? I need to know what he's talking about. What is he saying?"
Then they needed to put a face to the voice.
Yeah, because they can hear you, but they want to see what you look like,
right.
So they can say, "This."
Put it all together.
That's what they really want to say. Oh, yeah, that's what it looks like. Right? Yeah. Right.
I know what it is.
Right.
They want to be able to have a certain insult to throw with it.
They do.
Exactly.
Because right now you just
a
no face, and all they hear is a voice, so they can't call you without.
This little
Right. That's the only way you can put all those accents with it.
That's how we roll.
I'm gonna wear a mask when I come over there, so that they won't even know what I'm.
And I'm gonna take.
We're gonna blur you out,
right?
On TV, on the news,
right? That would be funny. I don't know what. As long as we don't distort his voice, because that makes me scared. You know why?
You have to do that.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I don't like when you know how they say because like they want to disguise that person's voice, and it instantly makes me nervous. It's like
it does sound creepy.
You know, it's like I get
Don't make the voice. Don't do it. Just
you never heard him distort somebody's voice?
Yes.
It made me. It's no, because you're right, because it's me. I'm so dramatic. No, but seriously, it makes me nervous. It makes me feel weird inside when I hear the voice change like that. Because I know it's a woman.
Scratch a chalkboard?
That don't really bother me. But that
plus they have that voice in horror movies.
See, like it's stuff
and it's
like
just a shadowy figure with that voice.
It's a shadowy figure, and you know the person doesn't sound like that. So it's like it's no different than somebody called you. What if somebody called you on the phone like that?
You know you can. You never had anybody do that before? Yes.
She would hang up so fast.
Only you know that somebody's actually called you with a distorted voice.
No one has ever done that before.
No.
Yes. Well, let me just in my defense. There's an app that you can use, and I could call. No, seriously, there's an app where I could put your number in and call, and I can make myself sound like a man. I can make myself sound like a cartoon character.
I'm fine with somebody sound like a man,
and you can sound like a shadowy figure. Yes.
Does it say shadowy figure?
Option 3, shadowy figure.
You don't want to sound like a man on a tape recorder with the batteries low.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It makes me nervous. It's just look. No, it's no different than watching. No, seriously, it's no different than watching America's Most Wanted. When you have a house by yourself, it's the same feeling. Because then you think, what's something about it? No, because if you in the house and you're watching that, and then what that person is local. No, what that person is local, and they say, "Oh, she watching America's Most Wanted."
But what if it's a rerun? What? And they already caught the person.
But
that's different.
I'm still wondering, what did they say to you?
What did who say to me?
Shadowy figure.
Oh no, I'm saying when I was in high school, we used to do that to each other all the time.
Okay.
And just call and would like.
Yeah, no.
He was already grown. That's
because it was good if you were like had a boyfriend girlfriend situation and you was trying to set them up, and so you was gonna call and sound like somebody else and be like, "Hey, this is such and such." Like, you just answered the phone because I saw you on. Yeah.
Hey, what happened? You called somebody up.
Right.
Nah.
Or hey, your girlfriend
technology
like,
took it up a notch.
And see if he act like you called like you another person.
Nah.
It's all ID. That's what I do.
It was ghost calling. That's what you could do because you could change the number, you could change the voice. It's all in the app.
Y'all would never know the beauty of having your girlfriend call and be like, "Girl, act like you talking about your."
Or put the phone on mute real quick while I had this conversation. Then I'll mute yourself. Yeah, no call ID. You talking mad trash
and then
on
when
our
he be
band.
like, and then this is what they say, and then he be like,
what?
"Oh well,
whoa,
this," and you be like, "Oh no, he didn't." No, so then it goes,
Pause for the
But that's not
cause.
actually what
Pause
we're
for the
talking about
cause.
today.
What is
Right.
that supposed
Oh,
to
wait.
mean?
There's another conversation.
What is that supposed to mean?
That's that East Side shit.
Look,
Ooh.
we will not go there. What school did you graduate from? Because no one knows West
Edmondson.
Baltimore. Exactly. No one knows who you are. No one. You don't exist. You're irrelevant.
Or the tree.
I know you're irrelevant. You know how when you're on 92Q now and it's prom season, they crashing proms and stuff, and they don't even mention West Side schools. No one. Who? Where?
They don't because
Is your
right,
building
the
still
East-
up
the
and
East Side-
exists?
the East Side schools are
Big
very,
East Side?
very
East
turned
Side?
out. If you want to go
I'm
to
just
a
saying,
party and
listen.
go to the East, that's true. We did work on the West Side. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
Hey,
It
Leslie.
wasn't just over East, West Side. Western parties was all
my
over.
God.
Wait. Okay, so
In your defense, Western was probably the only school.
Okay.
Period.
But Western is over East. Western's over East.
I feel like there's a Baltimore situation happening.
Absolutely
Because you
not.
won't come by us.
Absolutely is.
It's not.
See, we not from Baltimore, so we have no clue.
It's not
It's a whole
East
Baltimore
anywhere.
That's not East.
I went there.
You need
I
to
know
check-
that. No, you
need
just
to
went.
Google
I
it.
went there for 4 years. I know that
This
it's
is
not
racism.
right.
So it's probably on a line. It's like this on a line like, whoa.
Can we
I was on the West Side, didn't I?
Hello.
I'm down there.
West Coast Spring
look.
Break, so how's the East?
Excuse
End?
us.
Okay.
Hi, we
We going
We sorry.
Alright.
Okay.
So, and we're back now
The
that
finger.
the Baltimore
like neighborhood rumble.
neighborhood,
Yes.
it's about to go down, East Side, West Side, but I don't want to get into it.
Mervo class 06. That's all I'm saying.
All right.
That's a 06.
Oh, let's not.
Let's not say we did.
Anyway, so tonight we are actually not talking about Baltimore school rivals and East versus West, but what we're talking about is.
I'm sorry.
I'm just sitting here thinking because all I can see now is like I just think about East Side High. As soon as you said East Side High, I had Lean on me in my
Because
mind.
that's how that school was. You had the right memory. That's how that school was.
Right.
Minus a good principal.
Let's
That's
end
how
this
it
conversation
Okay.
because you trying, you reaching, that's
All
not.
right. So tonight we're going to have a conversation about the LGBTQ Continuum. And so why are we calling it that? Is because we've had several conversations, and one was relationships. We talked about, I think it was one other topic. And but now we wanted to kind of talk about it some more and give because it kind of came up when Kristen and I were talking, and I think the conversation came up with that, like the pronouns and that sort of thing, and just wanting to have a better understanding. I feel like I think we all feel like if you have people in your circle who are a part of that community, then I think you can no longer claim ignorance to what that person or those people deal with or whatever that is. And so we can't, I was telling Kristen, it's no different than if I am a white person and I have several black friends, I can't be ignorant to the fact of what they deal with on a day-to-day or a regular basis. I mean, you can no longer claim that, I feel like. And so that's why we wanted to have this conversation, and just for people who, whether family members, close friends within your village, your co-workers, just being more cognizant of how we address people within the community, how we are more accepting within the community, and just bringing those things to light on the show tonight. So that's basically what the conversation. And so we have a special guest.
Hello. Hey, everybody.
Yes, introduce yourself. It's Ty.
My name's Tavi, and this is my first time being on the radio, video radio. So
Welcome.
Thank you, and thank y'all for
Well, you
inviting
fit
me.
right in because you just came in and just went with the flow, and you almost had to cuss it down, so it really goes with the flow.
You're officially
Right.
a member. Welcome.
She from the East Side too?
No, she go to East.
No, I'm not from here, so
Where you
Okay,
from?
where you from?
North Carolina.
Oh,
Okay.
But
so
I've been
you don't know
here.
anything about this food.
I don't, but it's entertaining. I can tell it's serious.
No, it does.
It goes
It-
down
it-
on the
it-
side of shade,
listen.
trust and believe. But yeah, so we're glad to have you here. And so can you just give people a little bit about your background and what you actually do?
Let's see. Well, that's a lot. That's a big question. Well, in terms of this topic, I'll talk a little bit just about kind of my identity and how I came to understand it. I now use the pronouns they and them, actually. And for me, those aren't necessarily like the best pronouns, but they feel the best out of all the options that I know of and that I've thought of. And so my identity in terms of my gender is gender non-conforming, a non-binary person, and so there's a lot of ways that people who also use those labels to describe themselves can feel, but for me, it means sort of like holding male and female identities both, or a gender that's not either one of those things. And I'm a social worker, and so for a long time now, years, I've worked mostly with the LGBTQ community, and done a lot of different things within that. And so I can like speak to my experience and then just things that I know from friends, loved ones, and people that I've worked with.
But now you have a practice. We also want to make sure that folks know what you do in case they actually want to, work with you or looking for services. So can you tell us a little bit about your practice? So
my therapy and consulting practice is just my last name, Han, which is H-A-W-N, Han Therapy and Consulting, and I have a small therapy practice, and then I do a lot of trainings in the community for folks who are working on learning about these things. Maybe they work for an organization, maybe they work for a medical practice, but they're trying to incorporate more understanding and figure out, how do we make people feel more comfortable? How do we give the best care? So that's part of what I do now, is help train other people.
Right. So do you think that, because I think especially for people who are, I don't speak for myself, but when you're not a part of the community, that understanding what the different pronouns, I think how this came up when we heard about the different pronouns, we just wanted to make sure we were clear about what that means. And part of it is because, you're used to doing things, of course, what we call normal or a certain way, because this is what we're used to. And so I think that and it's an adjustment. It's an adjustment. I'm sure you know that, bringing people into the fold and saying, okay, this is what I want to be called. But not to say people are not going to make mistakes, not going to first look and say, oh, well, I think you're this or you're that. But allowing some room for people to evolve and have a better understanding and not just feel like, because I think, and I'll give you a good example, I think like, especially for race, we talk about that, where we have to allow people to, they may have thought one way or felt some sort of way or didn't have a good understanding, and now they've evolved into this. And do you feel like the LGBTQ community is giving room and space for that, for people to now have a better understanding, at least learn more about it, even though they may not totally understand, they may not totally get it, but they want to have a better understanding so they can be more sensitive. Are you finding that?
I think, you always have individuals who maybe have a harder time with that, but I think most folks know that people are learning, people need a chance to learn and practice, to get used to new ideas and things like that. And for me, I still struggle sometimes with figuring out how to explain that to people, like if I'm just meeting people, or to like when to talk about it, or to just talk about it right up front. And trying to gauge, sometimes it's just situation to situation too, in the moment with what feels like the best thing to do. So I think, I don't know, I obviously can't speak for the whole community, but I think that,
in general, people can do that. Can you speak for the entire
everybody?
Right. You black, so tell us what is everybody saying on the street. No, I get it. Right. No, but I guess with your experience, like, what have you found for you? Like you just brought up, just first meeting somebody, like, what's does that need to be the first part of the conversation?
Can I expand on that question just a little bit? Because I often call Victoria when I have questions, and I know she's like, oh my gosh, like, just figure this out already. But no, because sometimes she'll pause like, so.
Right. But that's just her normal, anyway.
Let's process this. So my question is, as far as the pronouns are concerned, when are they used, and how do someone who is not a part of the community know how to properly use them? If, for example, when you introduced yourself, you were saying you prefer to be referred to as them and they, because those two feel the most comfortable, but you're not like 100% out of the research and the knowledge that you have, sure that those are even the proper pronouns to give yourself. So for someone like me who's not a part of the community, how do I then navigate around that, and when is it okay, and how do I use those things?
Yeah, so I think first to know, like, there's a lot of different pronouns that people go by and use, and there's pronouns sometimes that are new to me that I've never heard before. So I have to practice those to get them right sometimes when I'm not around the person, so I can do it right when I am with the person. And I kind of like the practice of people, when you introduce yourself, saying, you know, this is my name, these are my pronouns, what are your pronouns? And not everybody likes that, because some people feel like, some people don't use any pronouns, they just want to go by their name. Or some people say, I honestly have no preference, like, call me any pronoun and I'll be fine. Some people feel like being asked their pronoun in the moment kind of puts them on the spot, or like, you know, are you asking just me, or are you asking everybody, kind of thing.
But what does that mean?
Yeah.
What does, so some people rather go by the name, some people prefer their pronoun to go by, but I'm just confused about exactly what that means.
So some people, you know how I kind of said, like, for me, they and them is the closest pronoun I've found that I feel comfortable with. And so that is what I want people to use if I ask them to, and I tell them to, you know. But some people might say, you know what, there's really not any pronoun that feels right for me, so I'd just rather not use them, and just as much as possible say my name. So it would be like if I did that, you'd be like, you know, where's Tavi? Oh, Tavi's sitting over there. You know, what time is Tavi gonna go to the store? And just kind of do it like that.
So it's almost like a replacement for your name. So if I introduce myself to you, hi Tavi, I'm Kristen, and you introduce, hi, I'm Tavi, I would prefer to go by, these are my pronouns. So do I then, my next time greeting you, refer to you as them, they, or do I refer to you as Tavi? Like, how do I then approach you? So that's what I'm confused about, exactly how it's used.
Okay. No, I'm sorry, I didn't understand that's what your question was. It's not a replacement.
Okay.
It's just the same way that
you would say, like, she, her.
She's sitting over there. Instead of saying she, you would say they're sitting over there.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So it's not a replacement for a name.
Right.
You would use it the same way
just the way you would use a pronoun for anything.
Got it.
Like, someone she went to the store.
Yeah, they went to the store.
They went to the store. Gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, I think that's, and those are the things, like, you know, having, you know, conversations about what does that really mean, and not feeling like, because I know it's a sensitive matter, I feel like. I think that, and sometimes we don't talk about it because we don't know how to talk about it.
Yeah.
And we don't want to offend, we don't want to say, but how else, in order to get past the offense, I think you have to first have a conversation. But once you're no longer ignorant to it, then I have to be held accountable.
Right.
You know. But within reason. So, and I know Victoria, we've had conversations with Victoria, and I know you both deal with therapy within the community. Are you finding that, not just on the pronoun, we don't have to just focus on that, but I mean just in the community, are you finding that the demographic who are more interested in not identifying as either or whatever their pronoun is, do you find that more women, do you find that more men, transgender, like where does it follow on the spectrum in terms of who you're seeing in your practice and that are more interested in that?
I mean, I don't know what you see. For me, I see a range of people with how they identify using different pronouns. So there's like gender identity. So if somebody says like I'm a woman, you know, I'm a man, I'm non-binary, or I'm two-spirit, or I'm agender. So there's a lot of different words people might use.
Okay, what's the non-binary?
That means, so like binary would mean like male and female, and non-binary would be like, you know, I'm either one of those or I'm a mixture.
So the people I tend to date.
Gotcha.
That way they get a version.
Got it. I had to do it. I got it. Got you. Right.
And some people.
I feel like I know that more than this one does, but.
No, I'm actually.
She's on.
I I've called. It took me a minute, but I'm there.
I had to give you an example, but anyway.
Yeah, and some people don't even call themselves necessarily a trans identity, or some people might just say, I don't conform to like traditional gender or like understandings of gender. But the other thing I want to say is that I also think of it as like a point in time where we're all kind of unlearning these things about gender that for a lot of folks were not traditional. So a lot of understandings of gender that were kind of rooted in like European ideas and not traditional to a lot of folks. And so kind of regaining a collective memory of that almost, or reconnecting to those things. So
with that being said, do you feel like older generations aren't as pretty much willing to adapt to the different forms or pronouns or identifications within the community because they're, for whatever reason.
Old school.
Yeah. Traditional wise.
Well, two answers. One, I think in my practice, I tend to see folks who are non-binary, not all of them, but those that identify as non-binary also tend to lean towards they, them. Okay. But that just happens. I don't know. That's just what I'm seeing. And it just sort of makes sense. And like I said, that's why I gave you guys the example of the people that I generally date, because it's one of those things where, like you were saying, that like it's the unlearning of like people who have grown up wanting to express their gender in a different way and just didn't really necessarily have the language for it, or just sort of struggle with it. Like you said, didn't necessarily feel one way or the other. They just sort of felt like a part of me is this today and another part of me is that. Like, but it doesn't cancel out. It doesn't mean because I'm a woman and I dress in men's clothing that I actually want to be a man. Right. This is just what I'm comfortable dressing in. This is how I express myself. Right. So that's why it sort of fits better, and particularly for those that I see that tend to lean that way. I don't know necessarily about older folks in the community. I think it's just across the board, because I think in the community you still have the old school, lesbians, etc., who have always been wearing men's clothing. They just didn't use the they them pronoun, but they would technically still be classified as gender non-conforming or non-binary because of how they presented. Right. You know what I'm saying? Right. But I don't think that in some spaces, just the language wasn't necessarily there the way it is. The focus is so much on the pronouns, because I wasn't even really aware of the change in pronouns. Like, I knew about beforehand, I knew it was more like Z and I forget what's like, in which I don't even know that many people who use those.
And what are they? What are they?
Same type of thing, just a way of moving away from the she, he, which puts you in a box, because as soon as you say she, an image comes to mind of what a she or who a she is. And so you're expecting that person. Right. So if you take that away, you can get whatever, and you have to meet that person where they are. And that's really the thinking behind, let me not use those, because I don't want to be boxed into what that means. You know what I mean?
And do you have...
I want to give the number, just because I think that in case folks want to call in and have questions, 404-436-1277, 404-436-1277.
Yes, please dial in and join the conversation. We want to hear from you, because I think that
people have a lot of questions.
Yeah, they do.
And I think, like you said at the beginning, if there isn't anybody that's directly in your circle or in your village that's a part of the LGBT community, it's sometimes hard to have the conversation and comfortably ask questions. Right. Like you said, like you guys will ask me, but then there's still things that I'm struggling with, right? Like I'm still learning, particularly about transgender identity. I'm still learning about that. Even with the pronouns, like I still struggle with that, because sometimes I feel like I'm in two different worlds. I'm in a world where, you know, when I'm doing my practice or what have you, it's, you know, it's all about making sure that you're present and cognizant to that. And then in my other space, it's just not so much an issue. And so I'm constantly trying to practice, but then I sometimes lose it. So it's a constant struggle. Like you said, if there's no one around you to hold you accountable, like I have folks that can hold me accountable and just remind me when I slip up and say she, and if I don't catch myself, then that person can gently say they.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And just sort of bring me back to that. But if you don't have anybody around you where you can practice that, you know, it can be difficult.
And I was just sitting here thinking, I was like, you know, even when you're dealing with race and some other, you know, other issues within the society, I feel like sometimes if you're not a part of it, you don't think about it.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's not like, you know, it's not in front of your face. So that's the, you know, so and I was thinking about even as, you know, being a black woman, being heterosexual, being like, there's that line of privilege within that, and not really recognizing because you just think, well, I'm black though. Like, I'm sorry, what privilege?
We have no privilege.
We forget, like, there's different levels within it, you know. And I'm just wondering, like, because people are not like, because it's one thing for us always shouting, you need to understand what black people go through. Right. You need to understand because we're black, because this is our issues and these are things we deal with.
That's right.
But if we don't have allies within other communities and other, you know, how can you really push anything forward if you don't have that backing? Because it'd just be us talking. Yeah. You know what I mean? So are you finding that even within the community of the LGBTQ community, who are the allies are you seeing like are really helping pushing a lot of the agendas that you all may have? Like, are you finding, like, is it mainly black, or is it, you know, white, or like where does that kind of, you know, what's the scan of the, you know, of those allies? What do they look like?
I'm not as deep in the activism part as I used to be, but I feel like it's still primarily white that's out front. I could be wrong. It feels like it tends to still be a lot of white spaces that are outspoken about it. However, when I was at Creating Change, a conference that's put on by the LGBTQ Task Force this year, I feel like when you get into the younger groups, the millennials, etc., I think that's where you're starting to see more younger people of color stepping out and having a voice and advocating. And it's just a whole different vibe with the younger folk today than it was a few years ago even. Where it was just really hard to see yourself. And I think just because things have changed so much over the past really like 20 years as it relates to visibility, that I think folks coming up are more comfortable being out in certain spaces, you know. And so I think that makes it easier. What do you see?
Yeah, I think a lot, if you're talking about like big LGBTQ organizations or something, I would say a lot of them are like led by white folks, like in the positions of leadership. But I really think in terms of activism and like pushing real change, I think that's led by folks of color. I really do. And
that on the ground, the grassroots.
Yeah, the grassroots and the people that are really pushing for like deep, lasting
some
change.
Policy changes and that sort of thing.
And just overall structural change, cultural change, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
But then there's still that intersectionality issue, because like you were saying, like when you have, like, I think a lot of times we forget that, you know, particularly as black people, that we can be, you know, power to the people all the time. But then as soon as it say, okay, well now let's support your gay brother, hold on.
Right.
Like I can't support that. So it's like there's that line that's drawn.
Right.
And so I think even within that, there's still that struggle of bringing people in to recognize, like you said, that these are our family members, right? Like they're in the church with you already, probably leading the choir. Like, come on, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean?
They the only one singing.
But, you know stereotype it.
Right.
But when we actually step back and recognize it, like these are our family members, these are our friends and neighbors.
That brings up a good issue, and this was something that came up. This was a while ago, because anything come on social media is already, if it came up yesterday, it's already old news.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about the Pusha T and Drake beef, but anyhow.
Oh, but we will.
We won't. Not today, sis. Not today. But you remember the gospel artist Kim Burrell. Mm-hmm. So remember there was a remember that. So there was a okay. So the situation is, so Kim Burrell is a gospel singer, and she had she was ministering in front of, I guess, I don't know if it was a church or whatever. But anyway, she was ministering, and she was going off about people being gay and lesbian within the church, and that was pretty much the gist. I don't know all that she said, but that was pretty. And people were livid, and what happened was that
her career hasn't been the same.
Her career, it hasn't been the same. And what happened is that because when people, of course, once it goes viral, it's a wrap. And so, what people were upset mainly about was that because a lot of those people in that community are in her camp, meaning they do your hair, they do your makeup, they style you.
That's right.
And so, and it was like, you're okay with that level of it, but when it comes to now you're speaking out or coming against and that, so that's where the backlash came. And I mean, and you had celebrities who work with, and it just so happened that that's when Pharrell's song with her on it had just hit, came out, remember? And it was a smash. And soon as that went viral right along with it, and he didn't perform with her. Like, so it was a whole backlash. And I brought that up because, like you're saying, these are the people people are in our community, in our families, and we are selective in the support that we give to certain communities. That's right. If it doesn't line up with whatever whether it be religion, whether it just be because my grandmother said, or whatever the case may be. And so, that selective finds, I feel sometimes, even, I mean, whether you're dealing with LGBTQ, racism, or if it's, I don't know, any other thing. That's one thing that's always on my mind, just those two. That's it. That's the only issue. But I mean, but those are like, to me, some main, those are some of the main. I'm not saying that there's not other, and other things that don't cross through, through those two. But it's like, but one still, it's like, how do you got to be able to stand for, like, I don't see how you can be for civil rights and those kind of rights for everybody and not include certain communities, like people with disability. Why wouldn't you be fighting for, like, we're not on the front lines of those things. We're only on the things that immediately affect us. Right. And really, it does. You can't tell me you don't have anybody in your family with a disability. You can't tell anybody you don't have anybody that's in your family who is in that community, in these different communities, but because we selectively say, I'm only going to stand for this, or I only have, now you might only have time to stand for it, but I'm just saying, what does that look like for activism for us, in our own communities? Like, how do we...
It goes back to what you were saying and recognizing that there's areas where we have privilege and areas where we don't.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And like you said, like if you are a straight black female, you have, hetero privilege. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You can easily walk down the street, not think about whether somebody's looking at you, whether you could go in and order a cake and they say, no, we're not serving you a cake because you're gay. Like, you don't have to think about that. We don't have to think about, okay, well, which bathroom do I use today? If I go into the bathroom because I'm dressed a certain way, I'm going to be arrested. Right? Like, we can easily talk about, breathing while black, but there's also like, I'm just trying to live, and I don't, again, if I look threatening to you because you somehow think that I'm a man or I'm not supposed to be here, even though I'm telling you this is who I am, that's an issue, right? So how we move through the world, we have those types of privileges just because of how we choose to, our gender identity, right? So I think part of it is that if we have the conversation around, a clear conversation around privilege, we can start to see where we fall. Yeah. And then I also think there's the whole thing with the visibility. And that's why you were saying, like, it's easy for us to put people out there as like, okay, that's a stereotype, we can laugh, we can joke, kiki, and blah, blah, blah. And then the people that we love and that we care for are in the background. And like, they're doing the work, but we don't actually recognize that these are people who have whole lives. Like, they're not just makeup artists, they're not just stylists, they're not just, like, they have whole lives.
They're CEOs and running companies.
Yeah,
but can't say.
Right.
that this is
who I am.
I think that's the difference. I think a lot of, like you said, making it visible, making those people who are the CEOs, having those conversations, and whether they're uncomfortable or not, to actually put a face to the stereotypes we create in our own mind.
Right.
If only I ever see on media, in the media, on television or whatever, that this is what a gay person looks like and acts like. This is what a transgender person looks like or acts like. Then, of course, if I'm not around anyone who's a part of that community that's out and open and willing to tell me that that's the case, then I'm going to automatically, whether I'm doing it intentionally or not, have that stereotype.
Right.
So it's about, when I do get emails and I see the signature at the bottom that says they or them, then I'm like, oh, okay.
Right. I was,
and that makes things a little
whispering
more.
like, what?
Because at first I was just like,
what does that mean?
it's a typo.
Right. Like, did you mean that? But it was deliberate because I saw the parens. So I'm like, okay, so this means something.
Did you copy and
paste
it?
And you sit quietly trying to
figure
it out.
But once you know, like, it's then acknowledging, like, okay, and then you can start to, like, get rid of those different stereotypes that you have in your head, because I think that's another part of having those uncomfortable conversations, is admitting that you do have those stereotypes. The same way we need to have the conversation about our privilege. If we can't say, oh, I have this privilege because of my marital status, or because of my financial income, or because of my race, or whatever the case is, then how am I going to have a comfortable conversation about something so negative and dirty and so frowned upon, like my bias and my
people don't want that.
you don't want to have that. But I think the only way to break those barriers are to have those conversations.
And you would.
We got real comfortable.
I'm sorry. We forgot we was on TV.
We were just talking. Y'all brought up some stuff that made me think about, the reality is LGBTQ people have always been here. And whether we know it or not, we do have people around us in our lives. And like you were saying, sometimes the language changes over time with what people have to call themselves or how they can identify. Safety could be a thing.
That's big.
Yeah,
Like, people are literally being killed in the street behind that. And I'm sorry to be cut you off, because I just thought about that. Like, that's real. Like, I saw some stat, and I don't know what it is, but about the number of people within the community who been like murdered in the community. Like, it's been like, it's not like a small number. It's like huge. And that's like a hate. It's a hate crime, right?
Oh, absolutely.
But they don't. Sometimes they don't find them. They don't even. Most of the time, they don't even pursue what the situation was, because immediately it becomes that person's fault. Like, where were they at? What were they doing?
And especially, trans women of color are the highest.
When it comes to murder.
Because the assumption ends up. So then now we have the transgender piece, but then we also have just the sexism, right?
Of just being
a woman.
Right.
And so then the question is, well, what were you doing and what were you wearing and all that stuff. And then the assumption is that, that's right, the assumption is that you did something to ask for
to trigger it,
right. Like someone killed the person.
Right. It doesn't even, and I was just thinking about when we would, with what's happening, like in the media, the things that we see in the media as far as like, what was our first experience of seeing someone, whether they were gay, lesbian, transgender? And I thought about it, and I was thinking about my first time I saw someone who was transgender on TV, and they were a prostitute with a bad wig. And I'm just saying, they had a bad wig on. So what?
Watching the movie with Wesley Snipes.
Let's not go there.
What's the movie? That was all those wigs were bad.
They were not to the end. The very end, he really came through.
Okay.
It was
Patrick Swayze and
some Julie Newmar, something whatever it was.
It's two something with love or something like that.
Yeah, Julie Newmar or something.
Okay.
Well, anyway, Wesley's. Anyway.
He should never wear.
It was. The movie was bad. Let's just say that. It ain't got nothing to do with the being transgender. The movie was bad. But I don't even know if they were considered transgender, because I thought they were just
drag queens.
And it wasn't even.
It wasn't about transgender. They were drag queens.
Anyway, but I remember seeing like it might have been one of them cop shows where the person that they were either arresting or whatever was a prostitute, like I said, with a bad blonde wig. And it's like always this, so that was the stereotype. So when I think of transgender, one, I never in my mind thought about a woman transitioning into a man, because the only one I had was the woman, the man transitioned to a woman with the bad wig on. And I'm just like, think about the first interaction or the first sight, or like the first thing you think about when you think of a gay man. It is, yes, it's this, it's all that. So when you see somebody in Tim's and all that, you like, you sure he gay? I don't believe it.
I was just having a conversation of very few of my gay male friends are very right. They like are very, if you see them, you would never know.
Right.
Very, and they will tell me all the time, like, I can't stand just when people are just extra and it's the yes, and like, that's not necessary. It's
and you like, I thought you like yes.
And I'm like, he's like, never do that.
And that's a continuum.
And that brings up a good point too, which is around femininity. And that a lot of times that is punished across the board.
What does that look like? Even growing up, like, who was a tomboy? Who was it, they never wore dresses, or they did, it was always these, you were already classified by the time. So when you see that person, at prom, and you're like, oh, right.
No, it's funny that you said that about the first time. Like, thinking about the first. Well,
they always have a bad wig. Admit it, Victoria.
They do. But I'm just thinking about growing up. we didn't call it anything, but we just knew that there were men in the town. Like, there was this one guy, men in the town.
You gotta know she comes from a small town.
It was a small town, so like there were two.
This is in Baltimore.
It was not East or West Side.
No, small town USA. No, but I just remember there was this young black guy, and like back in the day, like this was growing up in the 70s and 80s, and it was like, oh, he's he's sweet.
Yeah, right.
Like he would do this.
He's funny. He do that. He's like, they like this.
And like this.
Yeah.
But I just remember seeing him one day, and he was a like heavy set guy, and he would wear lace tops, like see-through tops or whatever, and just was so confident. Was so confident in a small town where he could not see himself coming and going. But he was confident enough to prance down the street as if he was on in New York City. In his lace ruffle. You know what I mean? Just very confident. And then there was another guy. It was funny because I never knew this man was gay until I was older, and I was like, because he just was an older black guy, but he always had curlers in his hair. But that didn't mean anything because it was
depending on what year. If this was the 90s, early 90s, late 80s,
the 70s and 80s. You know what I mean? And we never knew. But like when he would go out, to the club and stuff, that's where he could express himself. So it wasn't until I got older we started going out.
And you saw,
and it'd be like,
he still had it rolling? He still had it
no, his hair would be coiffed. Coiffed. But you just never, you know what I mean? So like, and again, there was no language for it. It was just other than, that.
And so that was
but everybody was like cool. Like he lived in my dad's house, rented a space, like everybody, it was not an issue. It was not an issue.
So my experience, I had two completely night and day experiences. So my aunt, one of my most favorite aunts in the whole wide world, she was awesome sauce, rest her soul. She lived with her girlfriend for years. We never knew. It was always that extended friend or that friend of the family. The friend of the family, my other auntie, but that friend had been in a part of the family for so long that nobody ever questioned it. And it wasn't until years after she had passed away, we were at like the dining room table, cousins, and they was like, because such and such and blah blah blah, and they were together for years. And when I'm like, they were together. And they're like, I thought that was you didn't know? They was like, no, I thought they were just best friends who lived together and were roommates. Like, I never.
Think about the impact that could have had on her, though. Being to not be able to just acknowledge and free. And for a young person coming up to not be able to talk to the aunt and be like, you know
that's what I was thinking. Like, I never saw them affection, and I never saw them hold hands, hug, and
That's
kiss or anything.
That's
like, we were always, how we were all sitting at this table having a conversation, that's how they were sitting at the table.
Part.
It was never.
And let me tell you, that feels sad.
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly.
when it's you in that situation, and you're like, I don't know if I can, like, reach over and touch my partner right now, or I don't know if it's okay to hold hands.
That's right.
It's,
or give them a kiss goodnight.
Absolutely.
Or whatever.
And let me ask you a question, Tavi. Do you, and not as much as you want to share, as far as growing up, like, did you find, was your family supportive? Or?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Oh, no.
Okay.
It took me a really long time to be myself and to live as myself, because I was basically told, like, in high school, like, this is not happening. So I was like, okay, that's not happening. And it wasn't until my adult years that I was like, you know what, life is going by real fast, and I need to be myself, whatever happens from that. And so, no, I don't have family support. I've had to build, loving relationships with other people. Queer community has been really important for me because of that. And, if things happen in my life, if I have a surgery, if I get sick, it's not my family, my biological family I call, it's other people. And so that, that's a reality for a whole lot of people.
And that's the unfortunate part. It is heartbreaking, because you think about people there's a myriad of reasons why people can be estranged from family members. But when you know it's just because of you saying, this is who I am, that someone won't accept you for that, your own flesh and blood, that's horrible. Like, there's a reason why people say, she owed me $1,000. That's one way, to be estranged, but to simply your flesh and blood. No,
she's talking about some money.
No, but
thank you, Charlie.
Like, that's, you know what I mean? Like, but to me,
I
for somebody, and I'm sure for a lot of youth, that's their story.
It is, and what we know is that and we have numbers on this now, but that for youth whose family doesn't support them, their suicide rate is like 3 times the rate of regular population.
And so, for listening to a friend's show not that long ago, that he was discussing the prostitution rate as well, that especially for transgender men. I always get this wrong. Is it transgendered men or women?
Well,
it is. Oh, I know you have both, but men who transfer to women. Yes, so I'm referring to them as transgendered women. Okay.
Transgender, not transgendered.
Transgender women. That often, especially here in the city, you'll see it a lot in the closer to the downtown area. That is a lot of prostitution that'll happen around this, especially where we are currently. But that the population is high because of that very reason. Their families have abandoned them. This is a way that they make a means of living. And especially with jobs discriminating against them and things like that, it's a form of income.
If you're a teenager, how are you going to get a job? Where are you going to work? When you're a teenager who gets kicked out.
And you already, all the stuff you go through as a teenager anyway. And then on top of that, trying to, because you're already trying to find yourself, not just, gender-wise and, whether it be your sexual orientation, all of those things, but just being a teenager, just growing up and trying to understand and navigate through life, and then you pile on the fact that you're also trying to understand who you are as whatever gender or whatever the case may be. So I can't even imagine and now they've been sent out to the world with nothing, no figured out, nothing, just figured
practically
out.
abandoned.
Yeah.
Charlie just commented, the movie was too long food.
There you go.
I used to secretly rent that movie as a teenager because that was like the only visual. I mean, I didn't even know of anything. I was just like, gotta watch too long food.
That was your way in. I get it. I mean, the outfits was.
Yeah.
It was just, and what was interesting, I think that the reason why I got so much backlash was because the men were these men like Wesley Snipes, like everybody and Patrick Swayze, it was dirty dancing, like whoa, like, and so, but I think what it did, what I didn't realize until actually we were talking, that what that did for, if you think about having, like that takes away the whole, like you can still play, you can still be straight and still play, like I don't know, it's like almost like, oh, well, wait a minute, are they gay? Because it's like immediately, if a straight man plays a transgender or a gay man in a movie, immediately
there's the assumption.
It's assumption like, okay, now you know
when it's acting.
But it's acting.
Right.
But I would assume it was the flip. Right. I would assume it would be the flip. Just how we get offended when there's a white person playing Michael Jackson. Like there are such great, amazing gay actors. Why can't you get gay
find
actors?
That someone who's actually
but you know then.
Exactly. But back then,
nobody was that in the 90s.
Yeah,
that definitely wasn't.
Yeah, nobody was looking for.
No, nobody was definitely looking for. Well, and I always talk to Victoria about this. This is why I like Lena Waithe so much because her comment about showing up. She's like because even in Hollywood, people are still not coming out.
I love her.
And I know she loved her. Like everything about her. Did you see her at the Met Gala?
Yes.
Honey, look at this one.
I mean, I'm just.
I know. It's her screensaver. I know.
Look at her phone. She's right here.
Look at her. And I'm like, but I know she in a relationship, but is she actually married?
I think she is. Either way, it's a long-term relationship.
It's a long-term relationship. We'll move
on.
But no, she
had from afar.
Right. She made I thought a profound comment about just being the reason why she's chosen to definitely. I mean, I think she's always been, but the visibility of being in Hollywood. Because if you're at the table and not saying that I'm gay woman, gay lesbian, that if you're not saying, then how will we show up and how will we have a seat at the table? Right. And she said it's not enough. It won't be enough until you have someone with a disability, someone African American, someone African American gay, somebody Latino gay. Like all of those people need to be at the table. Should not just be one person and then all because look at how the stories are told.
Exactly.
Well, and that's even
why if the story will ever be told.
Right. Well, that's even why we were thinking about having this conversation. I was like, I don't want to be the only one talking because I'm only going to bring my perspective. You know what I mean? Like
and
I'm
she
not
get bored with us, child. Very soft. She's like, look, I gotta hang mine.
No, I do. I think I was
like we in time,
but that's also
we
why,
didn't take a piss today.
but that's also why, like, in talking about the continuum, I use the term bisexual, even though I'm not sort of like with you. I'm not attached to it. Like sometimes I say lesbian, sometimes I say bisexual. Like if I'm, but it's because there's so many stereotypes within the LGBT community.
I bet.
On top of from the straight community about what it means to be bisexual, and it's like, and it's wrong. You know what I mean? And so I use that as a political statement. So to actually have the conversation that like it's not just this one story that you have this person, you know, usually a woman. The stereotype that comes to mind is that's a woman that's just back and forth. You're confused. You don't know what you want, and When it's just like sexuality in and of itself is a continuum, right? And then you may fall wherever you fall. That doesn't mean that everybody is bisexual, but you may fall somewhere on the spectrum. You know what I'm saying? But it doesn't mean that you're confused. You know what I mean? And so in part to have the conversation, like you said, to actually see that like, oh, like this is how you identify, and you're not doing those things, and this is, you know, it changes our understanding of the language. Because even within the community, like when I first came out, I was terrified to identify as bisexual because I would look at the posts and people would say off the top, no bisexuals. Because the assumption was that if I start dating you, you're going to leave me and go back to men because you don't know what you want. And it's like, and I know several women were like, that's not the story. You know what I mean? But there's that fear there because people have been burned by one or two, maybe early on, who maybe they were trying to figure it out, and they got burned, and so now it's like, okay, we're all
burned, like,
well, not physically.
Oh,
burned.
okay.
Sorry.
Gotta be clear, we're talking about
They were emotionally hurt.
Yeah.
They were emotionally hurt.
Use your social worker.
Yes, they're emotionally hurt. And so they're triggered when they see the term, because it takes them back.
I don't know the technical meaning of the term that Janelle Monáe currently came out identifying as. But is that pretty much the same concept? Pretty much what you just explained?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, pansexual.
Okay.
Yeah. So I believe how she explained it was that she's open to being in relationship with whomever, regardless of gender or orientation. Regardless of gender or orientation.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, you know, always have bullshit. This is a little smidget. But I'm just like, do you find like, do you have a good sense of humor? like about, because I feel like, you know how black people can tell jokes and be like, you know, it's just something we do because we black, you know. It's funny because we black, you know what I'm saying?
So
like,
we do.
You know what I'm
We tell jokes.
But I feel like, but as soon as somebody else says something, it's like,
whoa.
Yeah.
You cross the line, you know what I mean? Like, no, I gotta stop you.
Say.
But I thought we was all having a conversation about being.
Yes, because I literally, it's so funny, because I literally had one of my white coworkers tell me this the other day. We were prepping for graduation, and we were sitting there waiting for somebody to show up, and I was like, girl, you know we on black people time. She was like, I was thinking it, but I know it's important for me to say. She was like, so I didn't say it, but I'm like, well, I'm saying it for you. Let's go, black folks. We got to go.
Well, wait a minute, but see, it'd have been different if she would have said it.
And if I was thinking about if she would have said it, I'd have been like, I'm sorry.
I mean, I'm sorry, what is this?
Pardon me.
But do you feel like, are you within the community, like you can have your jokes within, but like if somebody, because I can remember when saying queer was a bad thing.
Oh yes.
You know, and
absolutely.
so, you know, just by the word, like
it's
that
like
was like,
word.
Yeah. And
You
so
can
like
say
with
it,
that,
but it's also become something else. And so now it's I think it's like the N word in many ways because growing up for me,
meaning now we
it's how it's evolved. It's been reclaimed because I'm like you, like growing up.
Your queer was like off limits. It's like saying something. Like I was still trying to get old people to stop saying Oriental. Like
Right.
Like it doesn't make sense.
No.
I'm like, that's
not
about
runs.
But I'm just saying like to evolve in that because you know older people like they have certain language that they use in terms that are very derogatory against different communities, and so it's like. Even that, so that's what I think about queer because I remember there was just recently a controversy about somebody using queer within a rap song.
Yeah. And that was dumb because he's like, well, I didn't know that it was used in that way.
You're
Come on now.
That's the day of the internet.
Right, like you knew. But I mean, like, but I do agree kind of with what Cardi B responded because it was her fiance. But I do agree that it's how you have a conversation about it. I think now the person can't no rapping, no ever get shut his whole career down. Because
I think
it's going too far.
Well, I feel like, and this is a whole different topic, well, don't you think that nowadays people are less willing to actually have conversations about things, but it's more like, okay,
that's true.
You said something wrong, so you're done.
Shut it down.
Bye. Don't ever talk to me again. Like,
get out
from everything.
No, you're right.
Also, like, kick you out of the whole community. Like, I don't.
The whole community.
Yeah, like I don't.
You're not.
We don't really know. I don't think anymore how to like work with each other.
And articulate your feelings.
Okay, how do we address stuff, but also like let you have a chance to learn this.
And that's basically what she was saying. She was like, "This, you can give people a chance to even get a better understanding, opposed to now shutting them completely down, saying that's it. See you against the community. Same thing happened with Joy Reid. She's had a feeling 10 years ago. Her whole and she even said she shouldn't have said whatever. I don't even know what she said, but it has evolved. And all of her friends within her space. Joy Reid, she's a political analyst on MSNBC, black woman. And basically what happened was something came up, I think it was on a blog or something, like and she had from like 10 years ago, and she immediately addressed it. She had people from the LGBTQ community on her show. She said, tell me whatever you want to say, but I want to have an open dialogue about it. And they were all saying that we support the evolution of someone's thought. Like you can't just knock somebody because they thought something 10 years ago, for whatever reason, and now this is where they're at now. And so that's what she was basically acknowledging. So like you're saying, we shouldn't just throw the whole people away and like that's it. You said one bad thing for lack of knowledge.
Right.
Now if you a repeat offender, then we got a problem.
Like the Roseanne show.
Right, Roseanne, no.
You're done.
I mean, that's not, girl, the ambient people had to say, look.
I know, they said, the side effects don't include racism. I was like, that is the best response.
Yes, I love it.
Ever.
I mean, somebody got to say something. But it's like those kind of things, those things you have to shut down. I'm talking about repeat offenders. People who you know clearly. Now, hey, ABC, y'all hired her knowing who she was. So it's kind of like you knew. Now there was a chance.
But it sort of goes back to the question that you had asked earlier about like if, practicing with the pronouns and things like that. It's like if I work with other people who also, identify as they, them, etc. And what I've heard them say is that when they can tell when someone's making an effort, you know what I mean, and just like they catch themselves, whatever. So if it's a genuine effort, then But if you're not even trying, then that's another thing.
And do you think that? So I was saying about the whole sense of humor, like so, like within the community, like are you okay? I like certain people just shouldn't make jokes about certain things, but I feel like within the community you can, like certain things, like you have it inside, And it's so funny when I hear my niece, her and her wife, like they have they're gonna start a YouTube channel. It's so fitting. They're so cute, and it's so cute, but it's just they're so over the top. But I love it. I love everything about it. And so sometimes she'll post things. I'm like, man, wait a minute, this how like because I don't get it. Okay. But some of the posts, I'm like, should I get that? And I don't know. Like I want to be in on the middle, right? Should I laugh? But it's so like, but within the community, it's just right. Should I feel like the old people? Should I be funny? Tell me this won't be funny. Or should I be shaming people?
That's like Kirsty was talking about. I was watching Blackish, and I was like, should I be laughing?
Right, should I? Yeah, that's what he said. It's like, is it? I don't know. And it's like those. Right. But I love having these kind of dialogues because how else we can laugh about it opposed to somebody being offended and never have a conversation about it. You just throw that whole person away saying they don't get it when you don't know really what their mindset is. Right. Right.
And the other thing is that, I hope as I'm getting older, even within the community, there's going to still be stuff that keeps changing that I have to keep learning. And I hope somebody will have the patience and love to be like, hey, this is the word now. Don't say that anymore. Like, stop. I hope somebody would do that instead of just being like, get out of here.
Right. Now, people being a little, sometimes, like now, because we find that sometimes, we all can be a bit much, over the top with it, just like, because we were trying to figure out when did it arise, this whole, like, with the pronouns, like, when was it a situation where somebody said, no, that bitch didn't call me that, like, what was it, what was the initial, do you think?
All I could think is, somebody was getting in an argument, like, she better leave me alone, she better stop playing games with me, you need to know I'm not, she's like, first of all, I'm not shit, you're going to refer to me as they, and I was like, and that changed the game in my mind. Today.
And that's the story we're going to tell. It's like a Dave Chappelle episode. Right. You know how you do a little skit?
I wonder we have bring that show back.
That's not to say we do.
Don't do that. I love that. But the point is that you wonder how it evolved into that. And like, what was that moment where I wonder where, people just started to feel like.
But that's actually connected to what I was thinking because you had actually said two-spirited. And so, and you were saying from a cultural standpoint, it's been around forever.
So if we think about, and this is where I say we can really go back and learn our history that has been lost and changed and everything, and is definitely not the history you take in school. But if you go back and you look at different cultures before colonization happens, if you look around the world, we have historical records of people
Native American,
multiple genders in a lot of different societies. Like I think over 155 tribes had multiple genders. There's like a map you can look up online now that'll show you different countries and what genders those countries have had historically, what they were called, and a lot of that got taken away from people, got wiped out, got punished, there were people who were murdered for that. And so a lot of people lost that memory and those practices.
Because Two-Spirit is directly from Native American culture. And
so
we know how they,
And so, and with that term, like, really before, tribes had specific terms for the different genders. And so Two-Spirit is kind of like what we call like a pan-Indian term that folks can say, well, people of Native heritage can identify one another through this term if that's how they identify their gender. But a lot of, I just think it's history that people a lot of times don't know.
And wasn't it also sort of seen that, like, if this is something that was explained to me by a friend of mine who's named American, that, like, if a child was sort of identified as two-spirit, it was almost like a special, like a sacred sort of knowing.
Not like
shunned,
no,
but
it was,
the sacred, there was a sacredness to it.
Yeah, so, and that varied with, within tribes as to what role the two-spirit would have. And the other thing is a lot of tribes didn't assign a gender to a child until the child was old enough to say, this is who I am, and this is
wow. That's definitely been wiped out. I mean, it just...
Yeah, and now we have boxes, pink or blue.
And the whole gender reveal things now. Yeah, and so if you really start...
think about that. Is that... okay. Oh, I didn't think...
Yeah. So, so if we can go back and sort of relearn these stories and relearn, I think, it won't seem like such a new idea.
Gotcha. So yeah, I mean, as far as like the conversation, that's, again, I think that having these kind of conversations are so important just amongst just people who just are not clear about it or just have and no one's saying that you have to agree or disagree. It's more just having an understanding, so you can move through the world and just with clear understanding of what it means. Because, it's no different than, especially for me and my husband, like, you may not understand why I am the way I am. But all I ask is that you just, respect the fact that this is who I am.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Read up on what it means to be a
Right.
Sagittarian.
Right. You gotta understand. Sagittarian,
It means something.
But I'm just saying, like, to me, that's what I look at it. Once you have a better understanding why people say
and it takes the fear away.
Yeah, it does. Because that's really what we walk in. When we don't have a clear understanding of who someone is and what, how they do identify or not, or whatever the case may be, I think that's what it is. You're fearful because it's unlike you, or you don't have a clear understanding about it. And sometimes we may not ever, but I think just the level of respect. People shouldn't be put in harm's way because of your fear. Like someone should be able to walk down the street, even though you may not be able to say whether that person is a man or a woman or boy or girl, whatever the case may be. But that shouldn't now give you the right to say, because I don't know, man, you don't deserve to be here.
That's right. Yeah.
Like, people are of value. And so I feel like that's the part we lose when we say it over there, or well, back in the day, shim over there. Like, all of these different terms that keeps people out of being valued.
And out of humanity.
Right. Like, you're out here, and we're all in here. And what do you need to do to get back in? And that means deny who I am and conform to what you think I should be. And so I just think that, I appreciate you coming on. Can you tell people how to get in touch? I want to make sure they have your information.
Okay. You can find me on my website, which is www.hantherapyandconsulting.com, or follow me on Instagram. And I really appreciate y'all having me on. This was fun. Thanks for making me laugh.
Oh, good. We try to make people laugh.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah. And then, are you based in Baltimore or okay? Right. So that's good to know. So, because Victoria is based in the DC area, so let people know. I mean, they just think you won't hear all the time. They don't know that you're a real life. So
I'm actually a therapist. You can find me on Free Body Works website. You can see my bio there, or psychologytoday.com.
And I mean, I'm no therapist, but I can get you straight.
No, she can't.
You're right. Don't call me.
Don't call me.
Unless you can.
You're right. There you go. Good one, girl. Good one, guys. Yay!
A mess.
No, so, thank you for joining the show today. I'm Krishna.
I'm Victoria.
And I'm Kristen.
And I'm Tavi.
All right, we'll see you in 2
night.
weeks.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.